Food is a very necessary component of human existence. The ease with which to access food varies across the globe. Governments are majorly responsible for the efficiency and barriers of entry for food access in their respective countries. The current state of the food distribution systems underlines the necessity of analyzing and restructuring the conversation surrounding class nutrition, food access, and fundamental human rights.
Environmental factors, including where people live, is important to consider when studying food access and food insecurity. It has been found that racial, ethnic, minority neighborhoods are disproportionately affected by increased rate of morbidity, mortality, and adverse health outcomes. Disparities are believed to be associated with factors including residential segregation, poverty, and neighborhood deprivation. Reason being that there are fewer supermarkets which offer a larger variety of affordable and healthy foods compared to smaller convenience stores. As a result, over the recent decade, there has been a surge in food deserts, a term used to describe regions with limited access to healthy food. These areas often have more expensive and lower quality food stores that are meant to serve as an alternative to supermarkets. As a result, poor access to supermarket has increased the exposure to cheap, energy-dense food. This diet is filled with processed foods, frequently containing high contents of fat, sugar, and sodium. This diet has adverse health outcomes, mainly on people of color, who also happen to have the least access to healthcare. Those living in low-income urban areas where there's a higher density of fast food restaurants and corner stores that offer cheap, unhealthy prepared food compared to higher income areas. According to the Obesity Society, zip code level variables including median household income and the presence of a supermarket were associated with obesity rates. The residents with the lower household medium had fewer supermarkets and higher risk of obesity. Transportation also plays a critical role when it comes to accessibility. Residents who lack reliable transportation have a higher time accessing affordable healthy food. Not to mention, for lower income groups whose actual place of residence and thus foodways may change more frequently than the general population. This is inherently problematic.
The US federal government has implemented its own food assistance programs with varying levels of success. Such programs are SNAP, the School Breakfast Program, and WIC, among others. By and large, they target needy individuals and families that sit up to 130% of the national poverty line. That threshold, by the way, begins at $12,880 for a single person, going up by $4,540 for each additional member of the family. Depending on where you live in the country, more than 130% above the poverty line doesn't guarantee you access to healthy and affordable food. Along with those federal programs, additional funds are allocated annually to state budgets for them to distribute with their own programs. States are largely stratified with regards to their generosity in view of need. Some states have very robust and generous supplemental food assistance programs with very low barriers of entry. Other states have high stipulations for residents to actually receive assistance. This is either through extra verification or a higher bar of proven need for supplemental food assistance.
So now we'll discuss the current issues with food scarcity in India. The COVID-19 pandemic has massively escalated the food crisis in India, leaving food security to be a huge issue within the population, one of the biggest problems being food wastage. The number of people facing moderate to severe food insecurity has increased by 97 million since the start of the pandemic, which happened while the government had 100 million tons of food in its warehouses, more than any other country's food stocks. The UN Food and Agricultural Organization estimates that nearly 40% of food produced is wasted each year. So we are seeing less of an issue with availability and more of a crisis with accessibility. But that doesn't mean that food production services are ideal at the moment either. Many agricultural practices in India have caused massive environmental degradation, with excess use of harmful pesticides, high groundwater consumption, and high levels of air pollution. According to a study by the Council on Energy, Environment, and Water, less than 4% of Indian farmers have adopted sustainable agricultural practices and systems. As the climate crisis expands, so does the serious need to expand sustainable farming before the environmental degradation becomes irreversible. Next, we move on to inaccessibility to food. The pandemic has put the already struggling population even further into economic crisis, as the working poor are under rigid restrictions that often reduce their income. Beyond this, the unemployed poor are struggling even further as supply chains are disrupted by the pandemic. Those that take up informal labor, which is over 20% of the population, obtain little income with no stability and no additional benefits that come with formal labor forces, for example, medical insurance or social security. Without these means, much of the population cannot afford food security, nor can they afford the medical treatment that often ensues from nutritionally starved people. Next, we'll move on to problems with the Indian food system itself. Value chain development and marketing platforms that link farms to agricultural output markets play a critical role in determining prices and incentives for the farmers. However, the agri-marketing structure in India continues to be fragmented with a large number of intermediaries, leading to high transaction costs between 30 to 50% of the retail consumer price. This means that expenses are much higher for farmers, many of whom are living on an already tight income. Considering 58% of the Indian population relies on the agricultural industry for their livelihood, these higher costs are extremely detrimental to the country's food security. People working in the agricultural industry are unable to afford food themselves. Just recently, from 2020 to 2021, farmers across India held mass protests to reform the government's agricultural policies and fight for guaranteed stability in prices for produce. Beyond this, crop production itself is not highly equitable or diverse, creating a growing need to implement crop diversification. Around 66% of the cultivated area in India produces food grain crops, like wheat, rice, oats, and lentils, according to the Department of Agriculture and Cooperation in India. With such a high prominence of food grain crops over commercial crops or more remunerative crops, as we mentioned earlier, though India has largely been able to boost their agricultural production in recent years, it has come at the cost of environmental degradation, especially looking at groundwater levels in some states of India. The government also promotes unsustainable farming practices via subsidies for agriculture inputs.
In India, there are various government measures that ensure availability and affordability of enough food to the population of India. First is the Food Corporation of India that was established in 1965 with the purpose of procurement, storage and distribution of food grains. It plays a major role in the food security of India. After that, the National Food Security Act 2013 converts into legal entitlements for existing food security programs of the Government of India. It includes midday meal schemes for the school children's integrated child development services scheme and the public distribution schemes. And after that, the NFSA 2013 also recognized maternity entitlement, where pregnant women, lactic mothers and certain categories of children are eligible for daily free cereals. Under public distribution system, the wheat 2.3 kilogram of wheat and 2.8 kilogram of rice is provided to the beneficiaries. And in public distribution system, the wheat is provided 2.8 kilogram and the rice is provided 3.7 kilogram. So almost 20 kilogram of food grains are provided to the beneficiaries. And targeted public distribution system, the 35 kilogram of food grains are provided to the beneficiaries. In the same way, in Antyodaya Ann Yojana, the poorest of the poor are targeted and the 35 kilogram of food grains are provided to them. Annapurna scheme is basically is providing integrated seniors to the senior citizens, and the 10 kilogram of food grains are provided to them on free basis.
We found two main solutions for solving food scarcity in the United States. Firstly, it's to reduce food waste. More than a third of US agriculture is being wasted because it can either not be sold in outlets or by the farmers that produce it. This excess is an unnecessary oversight of the USDA to keep food prices up and the poor financially dependent upon this existing system. The second solution, and rather intertwined into reducing food waste, is to increase availability and accessibility. NGOs, such as Food Not Bombs, the way they operate is fundamental in the creation of sustainable and regenerative food systems in the United States. While serving hot meals to the homeless and poor, they have a secondary function. They create spaces that empower precarious communities to make true change for themselves and society. Feeding is the first and often hardest part of true change for the system. Teaching them productive measures for self-sufficiency is the secondary function that is crucial.
To take a closer look at how nonprofit organizations are addressing the issue of food insecurity, I took a field visit to Faith Assembly of God, Inc., Food Pantry, and Soup Kitchen. The organization is located in Brooklyn, New York, and has been providing fresh, quality food to the community for over 30 years. It does not discriminate or turn anyone away. All are welcomed. Over the last 12 years, it has been managed by Pastor John and his wife, Minister Collins, who I had the opportunity to briefly interview.
It comes like this. We give them the entire box.
Oh,
we don't
that's
take,
nice.
Yeah, we don't take anything out. We just give them the entire thing.
That's awesome. And I see they have a piece of paper. What is that piece of paper?
The paper in their hand?
Yeah.
So what we do is to keep things organized, we give them what is it's a ticket, right? A, all the way, the entire alphabet. If we run out, then we'll create another A1.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes we forget to collect the ticket and they'll go back.
Oh,
so we want everyone to have an opportunity to at least receive something before, the same person come back and ask for seconds.
Yeah.
And we also serve hot meals too.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, so the hot meals, we bring it up in a box and we distribute it on the outside. So this is what we do every Saturday. We're here, and basically, we serve the community. No one is turned away, regardless of who you are, what you look like. It doesn't matter. People pull up in fancy vehicles. We don't know what it's for. It's probably for someone that they know. Yeah. So we don't turn anyone away. That's cool. And when we're done, meaning, when the time, because we're here from like 7 in the morning to prep. But the time to serve is between 9 and 12. When we're finished, whatever's left over, we take it outside. And we leave it on a skid. Yeah. So that, people who passes by, they get an opportunity to grab something. Yeah. So that's what we do. That's really awesome.
Based on the problems we have framed that have caused food scarcity in India, we have outlined 4 major solutions. We need to implement small-scale NGOs toward community self-sufficiency, as well as create a promotion of NGOs in general. This way, we can move away from heavy government dependency, which has proven to be ineffective in many senses. We need to promote small farm commercialization to improve the farmer income rate in India, as well as increase crop diversification so there are more options for nutritionally balanced meals. A part of this also comes with promoting nutrition education, so that more households can become aware of what these nutritionally balanced meals look like, and that will greatly improve health levels in the country. Finally, we must restructure the agri-marketing value chain and platform so that both producers and consumers have access to healthy meals and can afford to eat the food that they need to. This also comes with increasing sustainability in these agri-marketing practices so that food shortage does not become a problem in the foreseeable future. Here we have the opportunity to talk about the Chennai Food Bank, an NGO that is helping improve food security in India. It runs entirely on donor funding, whether it be small-scale distribution of food grains or larger-scale institution funds. They have programs like Adopt an Institution, where members can contribute monthly or yearly donations to cover the expenses of orphanages and other organizations in need, as well as entertainment and welfare programs for children. Gayatri, the Senior Director of Administration, was gracious enough to let me interview her to get a better understanding of what the food bank does and how it can help with the current food distribution system in India.
And in your experience, like from what you have seen, what do you think is the biggest reason why people are, going hungry in India? Why they cannot access food as of now in India?
It's main because that the rich becomes richer, poor becomes poor. So of course cost of living. So they cannot match with their income with the expenditure. All have become costly. In vegetables, even non-veg or veg, so all become costly. And with regard to food grains, since there are middlemen, so it has to come from villages. So they have to procure and transport from the villages to Chennai. So 1 kg of rice, if you buy in the village directly from the farmer, so it may cost around 30 rupees. So when it comes to Chennai, so that overhead cost is included. So we procure good rice above 50 rupees. So this and all people cannot afford. So some poor people like the dwellers in platforms, so and all like that only. So they cannot have good food. So that is the main thing, I think, in India.
As we've seen from the interviews, there is an active concern and effort to aid communities in need of good food. In some regards, the US and India are vastly different. The United States generally overlooks those on the fringe and actively rewards wasteful food practices. India requires better government oversight to manage farming practices, as well as the storage and distribution of food grains. On that front, there's huge potential for NGOs to fill the voids left by the government. In other regards, the problem remains the same. People need good food, and we shouldn't turn a blind eye. We ought to make the change we want to see in the world.